Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the balmy haze of a Roman afternoon, a world of slow footsteps on mosaic floors, of olives in bowls and sandals flopped lazily by shaded patios. Imagine the dry, sweet scent of fig trees in the air, a marble fountain trickling somewhere nearby, and you, lounging on a low couch with absolutely no plans to do anything else today. Welcome to ancient Rome, where doing nothing wasn't just a pastime, it was a cultivated lifestyle. You're in a toga that's barely been arranged properly, and honestly, that's the whole point. Out here, being too productive is almost rude. The sun is high and unforgiving, the dust on the road too stubborn to sweep, and every Roman worth his olive oil knows midday is for shutting up and slowing down. You probably wouldn't survive this schedule. It demands a kind of patience most modern minds would find unbearable. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it by you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the heart of Rome, the Forum just a lazy walk away, though no one's in any rush to get there. Street vendors are half-heartedly hawking honeyed nuts, and the baker hasn't even bothered to fan the heat from his oven yet. Nothing urgent is happening, and it's glorious. The clamor of empire is out there, sure, but here in this shaded portico, time drips as slowly as the oil from a stopped amphora. Romans, especially the wealthy kind, practiced what you might call an advanced art of intentional loafing. They didn't see stillness as laziness. On the contrary, they wrapped it in philosophy, comfort, and social prestige. To move too quickly, to always be seen rushing, was a mark of either desperation or servitude. Take the concept of odium, for instance. This wasn't just time off, it was sacred. Odium was when you reflected, wrote poetry, took long walks in your garden without needing to talk to anyone. It was leisure elevated to virtue. The opposite of odium was negotium, a word that literally meant not leisure. Work. Hustle. Business. How very unfortunate. You're reclining now, perhaps at a patron's home, where couches form a U around a low table. The room is airy, the walls decorated in fading frescoes of gods lounging, lovers dozing, animals sunbathing. Your host offers you watered wine, because getting drunk too early is frowned upon unless it's Saturnalia, and you sip as slowly as the afternoon progresses. Historians still argue whether odium was truly practiced by the many or reserved only for the elite. The surviving writings, Cicero, Pliny, Seneca, are all from those with the means to philosophize in marble courtyards. Most Romans, of course, were busy with the harsh negotium of surviving. But that doesn't change the fact that Rome idealized stillness. A fun tidbit: some villas were designed with so many atriums and garden paths that walking from one end to the other could take longer than an average commute, on purpose. Leisure architecture, designed to slow you down whether you liked it or not. Even the famous Roman roads, those marvels of engineering, were better suited to slow plodding than any real hurry. You feel it in your feet, the stones uneven, the dust ready to coat your ankles if you walk too quickly. It's as if the city itself is nudging you. Ease up, friend. Where's the fire? Here's the thing: Romans believed that a certain type of nothingness was essential for greatness. They didn't invent concrete or build aqueducts by sprinting from task to task. Instead, they stared at the sky long enough to think about how to bring water to it. Some evidence even suggests that elite Romans might have kept thinking rooms, small garden alcoves specifically meant for zoning out with style. Imagine that, a room where zoning out is the entire point. No smartphones, just birdsong and maybe the distant rattle of a dice game. In many households, afternoons were structured around meridiatio, that sacred post-lunch nap. To interrupt a Roman's midday rest was about as welcome as a pigeon in your bathwater. And oh, we'll get to those baths later. Right now, your eyelids are getting heavy. The warmth, the wine, the sound of sandals scuffing gently on stone, all of it conspires to lull you into a deeply Roman rhythm. One where productivity has been politely shown the door, and you're left alone with your thoughts and the gentle creak of the world spinning slowly on its axis. You wake up slowly, not because you have to. There are no meetings, no errands, no digital chimes demanding your attention, but because the breeze shifts through the lemon trees just enough to tickle your nose. The marble floor beneath you is cool again, the sun no longer glaring directly into the villa's central courtyard. A servant glides past with a tray of dates and cheese. You don't move. They know to leave you be. Welcome to the villa life, the gilded cradle of Roman idleness. These country homes, often nestled in the rolling hills outside the city or along the breezy coastlines of Campania, were carefully constructed to support a very specific agenda. Doing as little as possible, in as much comfort as humanly imaginable. Your host, a senator with a talent for avoiding the Senate, leads a life that's deceptively structured. Mornings are for writing letters, often long, rambling ones to other idle friends about the moral importance of idleness. Lunch is light but unhurried. Afternoons are reserved for philosophical reflection, naps, and maybe dictating a passage or two of a treatise on virtue. Spoiler alert, the virtuous life, according to this elite circle, involves a great deal of reclining. Villas were sprawling affairs, built not just for show but for retreat. You're standing now on the mosaic floor of a peristyle, a colonnaded courtyard garden at the center of the house. Vines climb lazily up columns. Fountains burble into basins full of lily pads. Peacocks saunter like they own the place. And in a way, they kind of do. There's a whole class of villa slaves and freedmen whose job it is to maintain this illusion of effortless living. The gardener who prunes the rosemary into cloud-like shapes. The cook who wakes before dawn so your grapes are perfectly chilled. You don't see them, not really. That's the point. The machinery of leisure must remain invisible. Historians still debate whether these countryside retreats were true escapes or just another way to display wealth. Were the senators actually relaxing, or just performing relaxation for political clout? It's hard to say. But Pliny the Younger left behind letters describing his villas in such detail that modern archaeologists have basically used them as blueprints. He wrote about breezes, window angles, even how the afternoon sun would land on a particular bench. You have to admire that kind of commitment to inertia. And yet, these homes were not just personal sanctuaries, they were also theaters of social display. You might invite other upper-class Romans for an evening of poetry readings under olive trees. Everyone would pretend to be very moved. No one would actually take notes. Even the furniture supports this lifestyle. Roman recliners, those famous lecti, weren't just for dining. There were dedicated lounging couches for different parts of the day. One for morning musings, one for midday feasting, and a particularly soft one for what you might call the post-feast soul spiral. You're on that one now, lying sideways with a slight wine buzz and a vague memory of having heard something profound earlier. Or maybe it was just someone reciting Virgil with a mouthful of figs. Your host mentions the possibility of a visit to the seaside villa tomorrow. But only if the tide's in the mood, he says with a shrug. The plan isn't really a plan. It's a suggestion to be considered, perhaps, if nothing else comes up. And nothing else usually does. Did you know some Romans installed skylights not for light, but to watch the clouds go by as they lay on their backs in the Exedra? That's right, this was before TikTok, and yet they somehow found the will to stare upward for hours without so much as a cat video to reward them. You drift now from one end of the house to the other. In the triclinium, the formal dining room, servants are preparing for another meal that will last 3 hours and accomplish almost nothing. There's a faint smell of roasted duck and honey in the air. Your toes press into the plush edge of a mosaic depicting a sea monster yawning, perhaps in sympathy with your current mood. A nearby guest, lounging under an archway, murmurs about the latest philosophical scroll he half-read. Something about virtue emerging from quietude, he says, already halfway to sleep again. You nod, though you weren't listening. It's enough to share the silence. There's a kind of dignity here that only the deeply relaxed can achieve. You start to realize that idleness in this setting isn't merely tolerated, it's aspirational. This isn't failure to act. This is deliberate, curated stillness. A life of considered pause. And here's the kicker. This lifestyle was so central to elite Roman identity that entire political careers were built on the illusion of odium. The idea was, if you had time to do nothing, you were clearly doing everything right. You step out into the open air again, just in time to catch the distant clang of bronze doors shutting. Someone's late to the bathhouse. But not you. You've arrived precisely on Roman time, which is to say, when the sun tells you it's time, not some artificial hour. Today, you're headed to one of the grandest traditions of Roman indolence, the public baths. These aren't the quick, lukewarm showers of your modern life. No, this is an entire afternoon event. A place where even the busiest man in Rome might pause to sweat, soak, and talk about absolutely nothing at great length. You pass through the apoditorium, or changing room, where robes hang like sleepy ghosts. A slave takes your sandals without a word. You're handed a strigil, a curved metal scraper, for your upcoming oil massage. You might not need it, but you feel more Roman just holding it. The bath complex is sprawling. Steam curls upward from heated pools. Light slants in through high clear-story windows, catching on swirling mist and the marble torsos of statues that seem only half interested in watching you bathe. There's a rhythm to this space, one that demands you move slowly, deliberately, without ambition. You begin in the tepidarium, the warm room. It eases you in, like an invitation to stop trying so hard. The tiles are warm underfoot. You sit, maybe exchange a few half-sentences with the man next to you. Is he a retired centurion? A disgraced poet? Who knows? And frankly, who cares? Historians still argue whether these baths were more about hygiene or hierarchy. After all, most Romans didn't have private baths at home. Here, a merchant could soak beside a senator. At least until someone brought up Cicero, and then the social gaps came rushing back in. But for now, it's peaceful. You towel off lightly and move into the caldarium, the hot room. The heat hits like a Roman horse cart, sudden, heavy, and absolute. You sweat in earnest now, your skin glistening like polished marble. Around you, men lie back on benches, sighing into the steam. A slave appears to rub scented oil onto your arms, probably something extravagant like frankincense or crushed violet. He scrapes it off gently with the strigil. Somewhere, someone starts humming a tune. You think it might be from a comedy by Plautus, though you can't be sure. These baths weren't just for washing, they were miniature cities of leisure. Libraries, gardens, snack stalls, even hairdressers. If you wanted, you could spend all day here without ever stepping outside. In fact, some did. And if you had enough status, you could claim a couch in the palestra, the gymnasium, and pretend to be resting between exercise sessions, while you eavesdropped on gossip about which senator fell asleep during a trial again. You shuffle now toward the frigidarium, the cold room. It's the final act in this play of passive detox. The air bites at your wet skin. You dip a toe into the pool, then, with theatrical dread, slide in completely. It shocks you awake for a moment, just long enough to realize that even a cold bath here feels somehow luxurious. There's something deeply Roman about all of this. The ritual, the order, the indulgence wrapped in the appearance of civic virtue. After all, what better way to show your commitment to public life than spending 4 hours sweating alongside your fellow citizens, pretending to discuss politics while secretly wondering what's for dinner? You overhear two older men murmuring about the upcoming gladiator games. One claims he's seen a lion fall asleep mid-match. You believe him. A fun tidbit: Emperor Caracalla's bath complex was so large, so elaborate, that it had room for over 1,600 bathers at once, and required a staff of hundreds to operate. It even had its own underground heating network, hypocausts, to channel hot air beneath the floors. Romans weren't just relaxing. They were relaxing with engineering. Now you recline on a warm bench in the courtyard, robe loosely draped, wine in one hand, honeyed almond in the other. A bee hovers lazily nearby, too sluggish from heat to sting. You watch it float and drift, just like your own thoughts. The sun is beginning to dip. Shadows stretch long across the tiles. Someone's reciting a passage from Horace nearby, his voice half committed. No one's really listening. That's part of the charm. Words are just another sound to float on. You start to notice a strange thing. doing nothing here takes effort. You have to slow your heartbeat, fight the urge to fill silences, let your limbs grow heavy. It's a performance of idleness, curated and precise. But when you finally let it take you, when the marble beneath you feels like an extension of your spine and the air smells of olive oil and lavender, you understand. This isn't laziness. It's an art form. You're full now. Maybe a little too full. The late afternoon meal, cena, if you're being proper, was an elegant sprawl of olives, lentils, grilled fish, and absurdly large grapes that seemed genetically engineered to be held by reclining philosophers. You lie half-draped across a couch, one elbow resting on a silk pillow embroidered with mythological creatures that all look like they've also just eaten too much. A lizard scampers lazily across the mosaic floor. Even it looks like it's pacing itself. This is the Roman post-meal lull, a sacred, unhurried phase of digestion, reflection, and, ideally, absolutely no movement. The elite Roman dining experience was designed for horizontal consumption. The triclinium, or dining room, gets its name from the three-sided arrangement of couches, all slanted toward a central table. You'd recline on your left side, reach delicately for bites with your right, and maybe say something clever about Epicurus if you weren't too focused on that second helping of honey-roasted dormouse. Yes, that was a delicacy. No, you don't have to eat it. But don't knock it till you've sniffed it. The air smells of mint and garum, the fermented fish sauce Romans put on everything. Imagine Worcestershire sauce, but more committed. Historians still argue how common these reclining meals were outside the elite classes. Was this just an aristocratic pastime? Or did wealthy freedmen and successful merchants copy the habit in smaller, cozier versions of opulence? It's unclear. But what is clear is that Roman leisure had rules, even in repose. You don't speak unless invited. You don't belch unless you're among equals. And you never reach across someone else's couch unless you're prepared to start a passive-aggressive war that could outlive an empire. This whole meal has a rhythm. First come the gustachio, the appetizers, pickled vegetables, sea urchins if you're lucky, and little cakes filled with cheese and honey. Then the prima mensa, the main course, usually something meaty or fishy and dramatically sauced. Finally, the secunda mensa, dessert, which might involve spiced fruits, nuts, and possibly another course of conversation about whether leisure makes you more virtuous or just more decorative. A flute player toots softly in the background. She's not especially good, but no one minds. The purpose is atmosphere, not excellence. Music is like air here, always present, rarely noticed. At the far end of the room, two old friends are locked in a debate about whether Cicero really liked to recline while writing. Of course not, one insists. Too uptight. He probably wrote standing on one leg like a flamingo. The other counters that Cicero was the original multitasker, likely composing orations while doing bicep curls with scrolls. You chuckle, not because it's true, but because it's absurd enough to believe for a second. You shift slightly, and a servant appears as if conjured. More wine. No. Just a cool cloth for your forehead, then. You accept. The cloth smells faintly of thyme and seawater, and you wonder if someone squeezed the essence of a beach vacation into linen. One curious fact: Romans believed that different foods were better digested in certain reclining positions. Lay too far back with a belly full of lentils and you'd be courting disaster. Some philosophers even offered diagrams, yes, actual diagrams, on the ideal digestion angles. You, thankfully, are at a solid 30-degree incline, the apex of ancient ergonomics. The meal winds down into what might generously be called the hovering phase. No one's eating, but no one's leaving either. Someone begins to recite a joke from memory, a saucy tale about a baker, a goat, and a very unfortunate amphora. You don't catch the punchline. You don't need to. This is what post-meal Roman leisure is for, the meandering, unstructured space where nothing urgent exists. Your only task is to digest, drift, and maybe offer the occasional nod when someone mentions Marcus Aurelius in a voice full of crumbs. You let your fingers trail along the edge of your wine cup. It's carved with scenes from a myth you vaguely recognize. Maybe Orpheus. Maybe just some guy with a lyre trying to impress fish. Either way, it fits the mood. Outside, the sky is turning gold. The shadows stretch long and lazy. You hear the distant rustle of laurel leaves in the breeze and think, not for the first time, that Rome might have invented the fine art of nothingness. Not through absence of action, but through its orchestration. So you lie there. Just lie. Let the evening settle like a soft blanket over the courtyard. Let your thoughts sink beneath the surface, warm and undisturbed. You wake, not from sleep exactly, but from something close. A kind of meditative blur where your mind floated just above your body, half listening to the murmur of conversations and the occasional clink of a goblet being refilled. Now the sky has melted into a dusty lavender. The sun's retreated behind the terracotta rooftops, and oil lamps flicker to life around the peristyle garden. Moths already spiral lazily toward the flame, as if drawn by the promise of gossip. It's the Roman evening lull, the part of the day where nothing is required of you except your gentle presence. You ease yourself from the couch. The servant gives you a respectful nod. He's probably been standing there for an hour, waiting for any sign you might want another honey figure. You don't. You want air. So you drift out into the hortus, the private garden. If the baths were Rome's public temple to doing nothing, these gardens were the private sanctuaries. Space was a luxury, and a garden, even a modest one, was a sign you'd made it. There's a shallow fountain at the center, burbling with such contentment it might as well be purring. Ivy curls up marble columns. Somewhere, a caged nightingale begins to sing, its tune awkward but earnest. You smile. It's trying its best. You walk slowly, carefully. Roman sandals weren't designed for traction, and one misstep into a puddle could send you straight into a philosophical confrontation with gravity. Historians still argue how widespread these domestic gardens were. Were they reserved only for the wealthy? Or did even middle-class Romans cultivate tiny plots of tranquility between brick walls and laundry lines? Evidence suggests a bit of both. Even cramped insulae, apartment buildings, sometimes had shared courtyards with potted herbs and chipped statues. Tonight, though, you're in the garden of a well-to-do Roman. The kind of place where even the birds sound like they read poetry. You pass beneath a trellis of grapevines, and one solitary grape bounces off your forehead. You pretend it was a blessing from Bacchus. Maybe it was. A quirky little fact. Some Romans hired professional garden designers, topiarii, to sculpt their plants into the shapes of animals, gods, or, occasionally, their favorite gladiators. One senator reportedly had an entire hedge maze shaped like a sea battle. You can only imagine the poor gardener trying to clip Neptune's trident into shape with first-century shears. You reach a stone bench, its surface cool against your fingers. You sit. Not because you're tired, but because sitting in gardens is what Romans did. They sat, they listened, they stared into the darkening sky and tried to look like they were thinking deep thoughts. Sometimes they actually were. Above you, Venus begins to twinkle. Not the goddess, though she'd fit right in, but the planet. The Romans called her the evening star. Sailors used her for navigation. Poets used her for metaphors. You use her as a reason not to move. A neighbor laughs somewhere over the wall. It's a hearty, unself-conscious sound, followed by the faint thud of a dropped amphora and someone muttering, "Not again." The city breathes around you, never fully asleep, never fully awake. In this gentle pause between day and night, you remember something odd you overheard earlier. A man swore his parrot could recite lines from Virgil. You laughed at the time, but now you wonder. Maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe Rome is just that kind of place, a city where even birds are bored enough to memorize epic poetry. You lean back, one arm stretched across the bench, eyes half-lidded. The garden smells of rosemary and old stone. Your mind wanders, not in leaps, but in slow spirals, back to the bathhouse steam, the sticky sweetness of figs, the ridiculous look on the nightingale's face as it hit the wrong note and tried to style it out. This, too, is part of the Roman art of idleness, the curated, atmospheric loaf. Not just doing nothing, but doing it somewhere beautiful, surrounded by fragrant plants and half-told stories. You remember that line someone muttered over dinner, "Only the gods are truly busy." You're not sure what it means, but it sounds profound enough to quote later. A servant appears in the shadows with a small clay lamp. He sets it on the edge of your bench and lights the wick. The flame flutters, then steadies. You thank him with a nod. He disappears again like a breeze. You pull your tunic a little tighter. The night is cooling now, but the warmth of the day still clings to the earth. You consider returning indoors. Maybe. Eventually. For now, you're content to just sit, to listen, to let the air settle around you like a thick, perfumed blanket. Nothing pulls at you. Nothing presses. You are, for all intents and purposes, exactly where you need to be. Doing exactly as much as is required. Which is to say, nothing at all. Eventually, the garden becomes too dim to linger in without bumping into your own thoughts. You rise slowly, because everything is slow here, and follow the flicker of oil lamps back indoors. The stone underfoot has cooled, but it still remembers the sun. Inside, the domus is quiet. Not silent, but quiet in that curated Roman way. Distant lyre music filters in from a side room, someone's low chuckle floats from behind a curtain, and now and then a slave pads by on soft soles with a tray of wine no one will touch. It's time for what we might call the Roman evening unwind. Not quite a bedtime routine, but a twilight ritual of gentle indulgence. You head toward a small chamber known as the cubiculum, your private room. But don't picture a grand master suite. Most Roman bedrooms were compact, windowless nooks just big enough for a bed, a chest, and possibly a bust of your favorite philosopher. Epicurus watches over yours. He looks judgmental, but that might just be the eyebrows. The bed is stuffed with feathers or wool, depending on your budget and luck, and it's been fluffed by someone whose full-time job might very well be bed fluffer. Rome ran on specialization. You sit for a moment at the edge. Not to do anything. Just to exist. The marble floor feels cool against your heels. A breeze stirs the linen curtain. And somewhere nearby, a cat yowls like it's been personally betrayed by the moon. You light a lamp and inspect the small tray that's been left for you. A warm cloth, a piece of honeycomb, and a scroll. The scroll is a short comedy, something light, involving a runaway goose, a mistaken identity, and a toga that refuses to stay tied. The ancient equivalent of a sitcom. Historians still argue about how common personal reading was in Rome. Literacy rates varied wildly. But among the educated, bedtime reading, or being read to, was a treasured part of the day. Not to learn. Just to laugh. Or drift. You trace your finger along the inked letters. The script is neat, probably copied by a scribe with surprisingly good handwriting for someone working by lamplight. You don't bother reading all of it. You skim, letting phrases flicker through your mind. The goat, alas, was not impressed, and, 3 denarii and a wet sandal later, he discovered it was not his donkey. You snort. Quietly. The kind of laugh that doesn't jolt your ribs. This is the kind of low-stakes entertainment Romans appreciated at night. Gentle stories, awkward misunderstandings, and just enough absurdity to make you feel superior. Not that different from modern sitcoms, really. Only with more goats. A curious tidbit. Wealthy Romans often hired professional storytellers, called anagnosti, to read aloud while they drifted off. These weren't booming orators, they specialized in soft cadences, voices like warm olive oil, trickling through the room as sleep crept in. Think of them as living ASMR tracks. You don't have a reader tonight. Just yourself, the scroll, and the slow dance of flame against plaster. You lie back. The mattress gives slightly beneath you. The linen sheet smells faintly of lavender, possibly intentional, possibly an accident involving a dropped pouch of herbs in the laundry. Outside your cubiculum, the city breathes. Rome never quite sleeps. Somewhere, a tavern laugh echoes like a drunk hiccup through an alley. Somewhere else, the forum is still being swept by torchlight, because someone, somewhere, has declared a dawn speech and wants clean marble for their moment of self-importance. Inside, though, you're in your cocoon. You close your eyes. Not to sleep yet. Just to shut out the flickering. You picture the dinner, the garden, the fountain's trickle. You let the scroll's silly plot unwind in your memory, pretending to guess how it ends. Spoiler: the goose probably wins. And then, like the last sizzle of a dying lamp, your thoughts dim. Roman life had its chaos. Chariot races, riots, laws so tangled they made lawyers weep into their ink pots. But this nightly stillness, was sacred. A buffer against the grind. A whispered reassurance that even in the busiest empire on earth, you could still lie down, sigh deeply, and do nothing. Tomorrow will be full of chores. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll visit the forum and pretend to care about olive tariffs. Or maybe you'll wander into the Subura and buy an eel you'll forget to cook. The empire can wait. For now, all you have to do is breathe. Inhale the lavender. Exhale the noise. Let the city mutter on without you. And if Epicurus is still watching, let him. He's probably judging your pillow placement. But you're too far gone to care. Morning drips into your room like a hesitant guest, uninvited, but not entirely unwelcome. A sliver of pale gold light sneaks through the curtain, brushing across your eyelids. You groan. Not from fatigue, really, but from the principle of it. Waking up is, as always, a little offensive. But you stretch anyway. A long, luxurious arc of muscle and size, one arm still wrapped around your slightly flattened pillow. The linen is warm where you slept, cool where you didn't. The breeze has changed direction. It smells faintly of ash bread and donkey. Welcome to another gloriously unurgent Roman morning. Unlike today's frantic alarm clocks and coffee-fueled scrambles, the Roman morning, at least for someone like you, begins with deliberateness. No one expects you to leap into productivity. That's for slaves, apprentices, and overly ambitious senators who enjoy shouting at clouds. You take your time rising, the same way a cat might emerge from a nap, reluctantly, and only if there's food involved. You splash your face with water from the ceramic basin. It's been sitting there all night, a little too cold, and it sends a sleepy jolt down your spine. You're awake now, if only technically. Someone's laid out your tunic. Someone always does. It's a fresh one, soft from many washings, the color somewhere between sand and beige. Fashion wasn't Rome's priority before breakfast. You pad to the atrium. The household is beginning to murmur awake. A few servants are sweeping with brooms made of bound twigs. One is already refilling the tiny oil lamps. Another is loudly trying to catch a chicken that got ambitious overnight. You accept a small cup of watered wine. Not for drunkenness, heaven forbid anyone start their day too happy, but because water alone is considered suspect. Historians still argue whether Roman water supplies were truly that bad, or whether wine was simply a matter of taste and status. Either way, you sip like someone pretending they understand tannins. Breakfast, ientaculum, is modest. Maybe a piece of bread, a smear of cheese, some olives if you're lucky. If you're very lucky, figs. Not the kind you had at dinner, those were soaked in honey and privilege. These are more honest and slightly underripe. You eat slowly, not because you're savoring it, but because there's no reason to hurry. The morning hours in Rome were often quiet for the well-off. Shops opened early, sure, but business meetings and court sessions didn't begin until after the third hour, about 9 a.m. in modern time. You look out at the street beyond your threshold. A woman passes with a basket balanced on her head, humming something with too many syllables. A boy runs after a runaway dog. Two men argue about grain prices, one of them gesturing so wildly he nearly swats a pigeon. You consider going outside. But not yet. Instead, you find a sunny corner of the peristyle and sit. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, basking like a lizard on warmed marble. The sun touches your knees. You think of nothing. Which is, as always, the point. A quirky little fact for your consideration. Elite Romans sometimes had a specific chair reserved for morning contemplation. A cathedra placed in just the right sunbeam, positioned for optimal pondering. No one ever wrote down what they pondered. Probably something like, What if socks existed, but for sandals? You open your eyes just enough to watch a butterfly struggle against a high breeze. It flips, wobbles, then settles on a fig leaf like it meant to do that all along. You respect its confidence. Somewhere in the house, someone's reciting poetry aloud. You don't recognize the lines, but the rhythm is soothing. Probably Horace. Or someone trying to be Horace. You hum along, quietly, off-key. This is how many Romans spent their mornings, not rushing toward action, but easing into it like a warm bath. You remember yesterday's bath. You consider having another. You stretch again. You yawn. You briefly contemplate making a to-do list and then laugh. To do what? Survive the heat. Watch a lizard chase its own tail? Make polite noises at your cousin who keeps inviting you to his philosophy club? And yet, even in all this stillness, there's structure. Roman mornings had their customs. Letters might be dictated. A client might visit to murmur flattery in exchange for a favor. You might pretend to care about your cousin's latest Stoic epiphany. But only if you feel like it. The beauty of Roman leisure is that it's built into the system. It's not stolen time, it's respected time. A protected buffer between sleep and responsibility, between dreaming and dealing. You sip the last of your wine. You nibble the last of your bread. You consider whether you're ready to put on sandals. Then, wisely, you decide you're not. You lean back against the pillar. You let your mind drift. Maybe you'll nap again. Maybe you'll write a letter you never intend to send. Maybe you'll watch the cat as it finally catches the chicken and decides it wasn't worth the effort. Whatever you do, or don't do, you do it in full accordance with the Roman way of mourning. That is to say, slowly, sunlit, and with an air of plausible importance. Eventually, your stomach mumbles something about lunch. Nothing demanding, just a soft, insistent reminder that you haven't eaten in a while and that olives only carry you so far. You rise from your sunny nook and saunter toward the triclinium again, that familiar space of reclined indulgence and casual crumbs. The house has fully awakened now. The marble tiles no longer echo, there's too much fabric swishing, too many sandals padding, and somewhere a small harp is being plucked with more enthusiasm than skill. Midday in Rome brings with it a curious blend of laziness and ceremony. You're not about to dash through a sandwich. There's no rush. Lunch, or prandium, as it's called, is usually the lightest of Roman meals. Still, it's a moment. And moments are not to be squandered. Today's spread includes more bread, of course, always bread. A few slices of cold roast pork. Cucumbers soaked in vinegar and salt. A handful of dried apricots, wrinkled and sweet. And a bowl of something suspiciously eggy, which you decide not to question. You recline on the couch, not a mistake in posture, but the proper Roman way to dine. Eating upright is for children, slaves, or people who don't understand the concept of lumbar satisfaction. One elbow supports you, one hand reaches lazily for whatever's closest. Across from you, your friend Lucius is recounting his latest tragedy. His sandal strap broke mid-market and he had to walk home half barefoot through a pile of fish heads. You nod solemnly. Truly, a hero's journey. The conversation drifts, as Roman lunch conversations tend to do, from minor complaints to exaggerated gossip to philosophical pondering. Someone brings up Seneca. Someone else counters with a dirty limerick about Cicero. It's all part of the meal. And just when things might veer into actual debate, someone uncorks a small amphora of chilled posca, sour wine diluted with water and a dash of herbs. Not a drink for flavor, really, but for hydration and a hint of smug austerity. You sip and sigh. This is not a feast. This is not decadence. This is simply necessary relaxation. Sustenance dressed as social ritual. Historians still argue over how formal prandium really was. Some say it was mostly a grab-what-you-can moment for workers. Others argue the elite turned it into a mini-banquet whenever they got the chance. Judging by the way Lucius is now balancing a fig on his nose to impress the maid, you suspect the latter. A fringe detail slips into your mind. the Romans had a practice of naming their meals based on the number of guests. A triclinium referred not just to the room, but to the 3 couches that accommodated up to 9 diners. If you had more than 9, it wasn't lunch, it was chaos. You chuckle to yourself, which Lucius takes as encouragement to juggle olives. One hits a wall. Another lands in your tunic. You ignore it. You'll find it later. Possibly in a scroll. The meal winds down slowly. No one leaps to clear plates. A servant collects the remnants with a speed that suggests he's done this 1,000 times and still doesn't know why anyone needs 3 different types of fish sauce. Someone plays a few chords on the harp again. It sounds better now, either due to practice or the wine. You lean back, the warmth of food and friendship blooming gently through your limbs. A breeze lifts the corner of the tablecloth, flutters it like a flag of leisure. You follow its dance with your eyes, too full to move, too content to care. A word about digestion. The Romans believed deeply in rest after meals. They called it meridiatio, the midday nap. And while scholars might debate how widespread the custom was, you've certainly embraced it with religious devotion. So, you make your way slowly, half dragging your sandal, half floating, to the bedroom again. Not to sleep for hours. Just to shut your eyes. To sigh. To let the food settle and the mind drift. Outside, Rome hums with heat. The streets bake in the sun. Horses stamp impatiently. Vendors shout with decreasing enthusiasm. But here, within the shaded walls of your domus, it's nap time. And nobody argues with nap time. You lie down fully clothed. That's fine. The linen breathes. You pull a light cloth over your torso, not a blanket, not exactly, more like a suggestion of a blanket. Your mind swims a little. Not in dreams yet. In memory. In flavors. In snippets of conversation that didn't require a point. You think about Lucius's fishhead walk, the olive that struck you, the harp's last clumsy note. You let your thoughts float just beneath the surface. It's not sleep. Not quite. It's the art of not doing anything. Perfected. And as the walls dim into a muted hush, you let your breathing sink with the rhythm of a city on pause. You wake, but not abruptly. More like a wave gently pulling you back from a soft sea of dreams. The light has softened into late afternoon warmth, casting long, lazy shadows across your walls. The distant sounds of the city are muffled now, as if someone has draped a heavy curtain over the bustle outside. You sit up slowly, the bed creaking under your movement, and stretch your arms toward the ceiling. The muscles remember the nap's comfort, reluctant to leave it behind. But there's a small thrill in the promise of afternoon leisure. You wander toward the peristyle once again, where the courtyard garden waits, lush and inviting. The scent of rosemary and mint swirls in the air, a little sticky from the heat, but somehow refreshing. Bees hum low, gathering their nectar from flowers that bloom despite the city's dust. The afternoon is for gentle exercise. Not the strenuous kind, of course, that's for gladiators and slave trainers. For you, it's a slow, measured stroll through the garden paths. Maybe some light stretching. Maybe just standing under the shade of an olive tree, watching the leaves dance. Physical activity was part of daily Roman life, but it was never frantic. The goal wasn't fitness for fitness's sake. It was movement as meditation, motion as a quiet companion to the mind's wandering. You pause by a small marble fountain, watching the water bubble and fall in endless circles. The sound is hypnotic, like a lullaby whispered by the earth itself. Nearby, a slave tends to a small plot of herbs, lovage, fennel, rue. You recognize the familiar aroma of lavender oil, perhaps from last night's sheets. The gardener hums softly, a tune that sounds suspiciously like a sailor's song, despite the landlocked city. Here's a curious detail. Some Romans believed that walking barefoot on cool marble helped realign the body's humors. Modern scholars still debate whether this was medical advice, superstition, or just a clever excuse to parade around with bare feet in public. You decide to test it, slipping off your sandals and feeling the smooth stone beneath your toes. The sensation is unexpectedly pleasant, like a gentle massage, the kind you didn't realize you needed until it was happening. Your mind drifts, as it tends to do. You imagine yourself as a philosopher, discoursing on the virtues of leisure. You're probably terrible at it, but you nod seriously anyway. Nearby, the gardener picks a sprig of rosemary and offers it to you with a shy smile. You accept it, tucking it behind your ear. Why not? It makes you look distinguished, or at least less like someone who naps too much. You wander a little more, admiring the play of light and shadow, the way the olive branches seem to filter the sunlight into soft gold flakes. The city beyond the walls fades into a distant hum, like a forgotten dream. It's moments like this that remind you why the Romans made so much space for rest and reflection. Because, after all, even the busiest empire needed its quiet corners. A fringe fact: Roman poets often compared their gardens to paradises on earth, places where gods might pause to rest. Maybe you're feeling a bit divine right now, or maybe it's just the rosemary. As the afternoon slowly mellows toward evening, you decide to return inside. The sun has shifted, shadows are longer now. The day's heat begins to soften, and the promise of dinner, and perhaps a bath, lingers in the back of your mind. You step back into your sandals, the coolness of the marble reluctantly relinquishing your feet. You breathe in deeply, savoring the blend of earth and oil and distant voices. This is the art of the Roman afternoon. A gentle pause, a measured breath, a quiet nod to the balance between action and stillness. You smile to yourself, wondering what the evening will bring. Word count: 1055. Evening settles over the city like a soft, heavy cloak, cooling the sun-baked stones and muffling the day's noises into a gentle hum. You move through the dimming rooms of your domus, feeling the transition from daylight to dusk like a slow exhale. The air smells faintly of burning olive oil and crushed herbs, comforting and familiar. Dinner, cena, is the day's main event, a time to unwind fully and engage with friends, family, and sometimes a little harmless gossip. You recline again on the triclinium, draped luxuriously across cushions, the fabric of your tunic warm and soft against your skin. It's a ritual as much as a meal, an artful balance of food, conversation, and leisure. Tonight's menu is simple but satisfying: lentils stewed with herbs, a bowl of honey-glazed carrots, some salted fish, and a plate of fresh bread still warm from the oven. A small dish of garum, fermented fish sauce, that pungent Roman favorite, is set nearby, ready to make a subtle, salty splash wherever you like. You pick up a piece of bread, breaking it slowly, savoring the crumb's texture. The flavors are mild but rich, the way you imagine Rome itself would taste if it were edible. As you eat, your friends debate a peculiar question: does a philosopher lose his wisdom if he laughs too much? Lucius, ever the cynic, insists that laughter is the true philosopher's weapon, while another argues for a solemn, furrowed-brow approach to all things serious. Historians still argue whether Roman dinners were truly casual affairs or meticulously staged performances meant to display wealth and power. Judging by the way your neighbor in the corner is juggling olives and reciting poetry, you suspect there's a bit of both. A fringe detail: some Romans would eat lying down on their left side, supposedly to aid digestion. Others preferred the right side, believing it helped the humor's balance. You try both positions just to be thorough, settling on whatever feels least like a nap. The conversation drifts easily, touching on recent games at the Colosseum, gossip about a senator's scandal, and the latest philosophical treatise on virtue. You contribute little, content to listen and watch the flickering candlelight play across faces and marble walls. The room feels cozy, like a shared secret between everyone present. Outside, the city continues to pulse softly, but here, within these walls, time seems to stretch and slow. After dinner, someone fetches fresh water scented with rose petals for washing hands, a small luxury, but a reminder that even the simplest routines are part of the Roman art of living. You lean back, feeling the meal settle comfortably, the warmth of companionship wrapping around you like a soft blanket. The evening promises a bath, perhaps some quiet reading, or the gentle companionship of music drifting through the open windows. And all the while, you know that the art of doing nothing, of savoring these slow, unhurried moments, is the very heart of this ancient city's soul. The bathhouse waits like a quiet sanctuary as you make your way through the twilight streets, the cool stones beneath your feet gradually absorbing the day's warmth. The sounds of the city have softened now into a gentle murmur. distant laughter, the occasional shout of a vendor packing up, the soft splash of water somewhere nearby. Roman baths, thermae, are more than just places to clean up. They're social hubs, quiet retreats, even spas of their day. You're not here for a quick rinse. This is a slow, deliberate immersion into relaxation, a carefully choreographed ritual of warmth and calm. You enter the main hall, the steam rising like morning mist, thick with the scent of oils and sweat mingling. The walls are lined with smooth marble, and soft laughter echoes off the vaulted ceilings. The steady splash of water and the murmur of quiet conversation wrap around you like a gentle tide. First, you move to the apoditorium, the changing room, where you shed your tunic and sandals, folding them neatly on a bench. Naked, you feel the cool air kiss your skin, a refreshing contrast to the warmth you anticipate. Next, the tepidarium, a warm room designed to prepare your body for the heat to come. The air here is like a gentle hug, just warm enough to coax your muscles into soft relaxation. You sit on a bench, feeling the heat seep into your bones. From there, the caldarium awaits, the hot bath. You slip into the steaming water, the heat embracing you fully, melting away any remaining tension. The water bubbles softly around you, carrying scents of rosemary and bay leaf, mixed with just a hint of sulfur from the natural springs. The sensation is hypnotic, almost trance-like. You close your eyes, letting the heat lull you deeper into stillness. Around you, others soak in companionable silence or low conversation. It's not a crowded rush, but a gentle communal ease. Some Romans would scrape their skin with a strigil, a curved metal tool, to exfoliate. You try it hesitantly, the sensation odd but oddly satisfying, like brushing away the day's dust and worries. Historians still argue whether baths were more about hygiene or social theater. Maybe both. Either way, you're grateful for the chance to float weightless in warmth. A quirky detail: certain baths featured libraries and gardens nearby, so patrons could read or stroll between sessions. You imagine yourself wandering through a marble garden after your soak, feeling like a character from a novel. After a while, you ease into the frigidarium, the cold bath, a sharp, invigorating contrast to the heat. The cold water bites gently at your skin, waking you up just enough to appreciate the warmth once more. Finally, you dry off, wrap yourself in a soft linen cloth, and make your way back home. Your skin tingles from the experience, your mind pleasantly foggy, as if the baths have washed away more than just dirt. The Roman bathhouse, you realize, is a perfect blend of doing nothing and doing something deeply nourishing. You step back into the quiet streets, the night cool and welcoming. You return to your home under the velvet cloak of night, the stars twinkling faintly through the open windows. The city has quieted further. The hustle and bustle has faded to an occasional whisper of footsteps or a distant shout, muffled and slow like a bedtime story told in murmurs. Your domus feels particularly inviting now, the cool marble floors offering relief from the day's heat, the flicker of oil lamps casting soft, dancing shadows on the walls. You settle into your favorite chair, the cushions just right for sinking in without completely surrendering to sleep. Tonight, like many others, you choose to read, or rather, to have someone read to you. Scrolls and wax tablets lie ready, their texts promising gentle escapes into philosophy, poetry, or the quiet oddities of history. The voice of the reader is soft, rhythmic, weaving words into a soothing tapestry that blankets your thoughts. You listen to verses from Virgil or the light-hearted tales of Petronius, the words a gentle current that carries you away without effort. The flickering flame catches on the scroll's edges, making the letters dance like fireflies in the night. It's a quiet kind of entertainment, designed to coax your mind toward rest while still engaging it enough to keep the day's worries at bay. In ancient Rome, this practice of listening to readings was common among the elite, and historians still debate how often everyday Romans had access to such luxuries. Some argue it was a rare indulgence, others suggest it was woven into the fabric of daily life more than we realize. A curious detail: some listeners preferred tragic epics to lull them into sleep, while others found comedic verses far more relaxing. You tend to fall somewhere in the middle, laughing softly at the subtle jokes Petronius slips in between lines of court intrigue. As the story unfolds, you let your eyes close partially, focusing on the gentle cadence of the voice rather than the words themselves. Your breathing slows, and your muscles loosen, the the world of the scrolls blending with the quiet comfort of your room. Outside, the city hums a lullaby of distant crickets and the occasional low bark of a dog, sounds that have surely echoed through these streets for centuries. This is your final ritual before sleep, a soft farewell to the day, a bridge between wakefulness and dreams. And as the candle gutter flickers lower, your mind begins to drift, the stories and shadows merging into a gentle night's embrace. The night deepens, and you find yourself slipping further from the waking world. The dim glow from your lamp has faded to a mere ember, and the soft rustle of fabric and distant owl calls fill the stillness. Your body settles deeper into the bed's embrace, the linen sheets cool and smooth against your skin. You think about the day's small moments, the gentle sway of olive branches, the warm bath's embrace, the laughter shared over dinner. These memories, simple and unhurried, seem to weave together into a comforting quilt against the night's quiet. In these hours, Roman homes were often guarded by loyal dogs, their quiet presence a subtle reassurance. Some even believed these dogs had a protective spirit, warding off bad dreams or restless spirits that might disturb the night. Whether superstition or affection, their gentle breathing nearby adds a layer of calm. You recall a peculiar fact. The Romans had special words for the phases of sleep, distinguishing between the light and deep states, dreams that foretold messages, and those that were mere flickers of the mind. Historians still argue whether their detailed understanding was medical, mystical, or a blend of both. Your thoughts wander to the feather pillows you rest upon, luxuries not everyone could afford, but prized for their softness and the way they seemed to cradle the head like a gentle hand. Perhaps the most intriguing detail is that some Romans believed certain scents, like lavender or violet, could promote restful sleep and ward off nightmares. You inhale faintly, imagining the subtle presence of these aromas around you now. The room grows cooler as the night stretches onward, the city's sounds fading into a distant heartbeat. You feel the slow descent into true rest, the kind that comes after a day well spent doing nothing and everything all at once. As you drift further, the shadows lengthen and blur, the boundary between consciousness and dreams thinning to a delicate veil. You float on this quiet sea, buoyed by soft memories and whispered comforts. The art of doing nothing, after all, is the art of being fully present in each tranquil moment, even as you fall gently away from them. The deep night envelopes you now, the house completely still except for the soft, rhythmic rise and fall of your breath. Outside, the city lies dormant beneath a velvet sky speckled with countless stars, ancient witnesses to countless nights like this one. Your mind, now untethered from the day's concerns, wanders through gentle landscapes of memory and imagination. You think of the quiet streets of Rome when all is hushed, the glow of distant lamps barely visible through the mist. Even the grandest Romans cherished these moments of stillness, the calm after the day's bustle. Their private rooms, or cubicula, were sanctuaries, carefully arranged to promote relaxation. Perhaps you notice the faint scent of myrrh or cedar wood lingering in the air, subtle reminders of the rituals that prepared one for rest. You remember a fringe belief. Some Romans thought that placing a small charm or amulet under the pillow could invite pleasant dreams and keep bad ones at bay. Modern historians still debate whether these were common practices or more isolated superstitions. Your thoughts drift to the peculiar notion that sleep itself was sometimes seen as a kind of temporary death, a peaceful voyage from which one hoped to return renewed. The idea that you are, in these hours, slipping between worlds is oddly comforting. There's a quiet magic in that thought, that doing nothing is not just idleness but a necessary pause, a sacred reset that ancient Romans embraced with intention and grace. You feel the slow deepening of sleep's pull, the gentle tug that promises release from effort and thought. The sensations of the day, the garden's breeze, the warmth of the bath, the softness of the linen, all blend into a soothing embrace. As your eyelids grow heavy, the world around you softens into a watercolor blur, edges fading, sounds dimming to a lullaby. You surrender willingly to the night's quiet wisdom, cradled in the art of doing nothing. The first light of dawn has yet to break, but somewhere deep inside you, the gentle rhythm of the city's awakening stirs faintly, like a slow heartbeat beneath the quiet. Your body remains nestled in the soft folds of your bed, the cool morning air whispering through the open window with a promise of a new day. In these fragile moments between sleep and wakefulness, you feel the lingering traces of yesterday's peaceful idleness, the kind that seeps into your bones and anchors you. The art of doing nothing, you realize, is more than just stillness. It is a kind of intentional presence, a mindful breathing space within the endless flow of life. You think back to the earlier scenes of your day, the bustling markets you never quite had to join, the silent gardens where the roses nodded gently in the breeze, the soothing warmth of the baths that felt like a tender hug. Each fragment a small, treasured thread woven into the fabric of your calm. Historians still argue whether this rhythm of leisurely pauses was truly widespread or reserved for the privileged few. But whatever the case, the legacy remains, a quiet reminder that rest and contemplation are vital, timeless parts of human nature. And here, in the cool hush of early morning, you feel that wisdom settle around you like a soft shawl. Your breathing slows further, a gentle tide pulling you toward deep, restorative rest. Outside, the city stirs softly, a promise of life unfolding anew. Inside, you rest, wrapped in the peaceful art of doing nothing, an ancient gift, carried through centuries to this very moment. Now, as the world begins to brighten, you drift fully into sleep, the quiet companionship of history cradling you gently, like a whispered good night. The day's cares fall away as your thoughts dissolve into slow, steady waves. Imagine the warm sun rising over terracotta roofs, the distant murmur of water in aqueducts, and the soft rustle of olive branches swaying in the breeze. Let your body relax completely. Feel the calm embrace your mind, smoothing out any remaining tension. Know that in rest, you are renewing yourself, just as the Romans once did, in their own tranquil ways. And when morning comes, it will find you rested, refreshed, ready to greet the day. Sleep well, wrapped in the gentle, timeless art of doing nothing.